Welcome to another edition of Unplug It. As the fight goes on, we get through the West Coast Eagles at Banana Plantation and move on to the Hawthorn clash this week. Still alive. We got a result go our way on the weekend with Richmond losing. Another result was not ideal. Obviously, not Richmond losing, but Richmond not getting the 4 points. And with the Western Bulldogs beating Melbourne, probably wasn't ideal, but we keep ourselves in the fight out of the 8 only on percentage. Tough fixture to come. We play a Hawthorn side that's won 3 in a row. A Hawthorn side that we have had a pretty good record against over recent years, and we obviously need to keep that going. It wasn't the perfect performance, but it was a step in the right direction. It was probably never going to be the perfect performance, but got the job done. Tricky conditions. It had been wet in Perth. There'd been a heavy schedule at Optus Stadium in the days leading up with the Aston Villa-Manchester United match and other games that the day before. That combined with the conditions meant, we had the shifting surface and it wasn't always easy, but we were able to weather the storm from what we said is a West Coast Eagles side, whilst not very good, had certainly improved a bit in recent weeks. So we get through it. And we look ahead to this week's clash. It was a strange one, Nick, as I bring you in. First of all, it's always nerve-wracking watching St Kilda, and I know West Coast came at us a bit in the third quarter, but I kind of had a feeling for most of the day that we'd probably be okay, which is a rarity, but obviously we got there in the end.
Yeah, I mean, you spoke last week about that Banana Plantation, and it was very much like that. I mean, going into any game with that sort of massive expectation, worst team in the league, worst team in the Eagles history, etc. All that stuff that we touched on last week. And then to dominate for so much of that first quarter, especially, and go in behind at quarter time was, I mean, you could almost see that train wreck happening in slow motion again. But you're right. It kind of like, even though we were down at quarter time, it felt like we were so dominant up to that point that it almost felt like we couldn't lose. And I don't know what it was because, H, you and I watched the game together, but I mean, given everything, I felt like we were really reasonably calm throughout the course of the game and never really kind of got too up and about or too antsy or anything like that. I mean, it was frustrating at times, but there was a level of calmness, I think, watching that game that didn't really matter what West Coast threw at us, that we'd always managed to kick that extra one or get that extra one at the end and just managed to make it work somehow. It just had that feeling about it. I know, we would have loved to have beaten them by 150 points, but, all things considered, such a banana skin game, the conditions, the teams, the outs for them, it's just one that we had to win and just had to get the job done. And I'm not sure that we learnt a huge amount about us or them, to be completely honest. But it was just something that we just had to get the job done, and we did.
I think we pretty much almost missed the last 2 goals of the first half. We got a bit sucked into the Essendon Collingwood game. It was the whole pub we were at just got into it. It was quite amusing to watch. I turned around and went, oh, Butler kicked the goal. There we go. So
it was a reasonable 5 minutes of footy. So
it was probably a lot more entertaining than what we were actually watching, to be honest. So it was, but yeah, well, I think last week I said we want to win 4 quarters of footy. 3 would probably have been a pass. We won 2. We won those 2 very easily though, and that's where you sort of go, okay, look, we've won those very easily, but we probably should have at least taken 1 more. And that first quarter that we dominated so much, we should be winning that quarter by what the possessions were, 3 to 4 goals.
Oh,
that should have given us the kickstart. We should have really taken off from the start there, but it was just a bit wasteful, a little bit still kicking it to no one, a little bit of just not thinking it through. Then as the game went on a little bit, we saw a few moments where a player propped and stopped and looked and went, I'm not kicking to that option. And waited a second and went, there's a better option. I'll kick it to them. And we hit a target in the 40-50. It's just, you look and go, well, that's how simple it is. Just that half a second longer to think through it, instead of just putting it on the boot and sending it forward without even looking. That's when we made it look easy. And that's just that half a second we need to take a little bit longer just to calm, let that forward get, I guess, that half a meter off the defender instead of just sitting on top of him. And when we did that, you look good. And it's not frustrating. It's good football. So
yeah, I guess we got a bit
the
of
patches.
that the patchy inconsistency was the thing that kind of stood out to me. So I mean, 32-17 inside 50s in the first half, but I think it was 18-9 or something like that in the first quarter. And obviously in the second quarter we had 14 entries and kicked 7 goals, 3, which is obviously great conversion. So it all clicked in the second quarter. It's
phenomenal, really.
That's right. But in the first quarter, you're watching it. We're missing targets inside 50. There didn't look like there was great system going forward. And obviously to be 32-17 at halftime against a bad side and to obviously only lead by 16 points is wasteful. I know West Coast kicked 7-1 and took their chances. And if they kick 4-4, for example, then we're well and truly clear. But clearly, I mean, we saw it against Fremantle where we dominated periods of the game, didn't put them away, and they were a good enough side to smack us in the mouth when we did that, whereas West Coast were unlikely to do that. I mean, the third quarter, I think at one stage West Coast had 15 inside 50s to 1 at the start of the third quarter, but only kicked 2 goals. Obviously, other teams would kick 6 against you or something in that moment. But from that point on,
we had 6 or 7 in a row to end that quarter as well.
And only kick 1 goal. Like, I mean, difficult conditions, but we then established control and went away with it. But it was a little bit of that patchy inconsistency that we've had. But I think our effort and intensity was where you want it to be. We fought pretty hard. It wasn't perfect. But we've got to remember, West Coast lost to Geelong by 18 points at home. They beat an in-form Essendon. They lost to Richmond by, I think, 20 points at the MCG, to Hawthorn by 20 points at the MCG, and we beat them by 5 goals. That's right. We beat them by 5 goals. So that's been about what's happened in West Coast games in the last couple of months. So, again, room for improvement, but on the most part, it wasn't too bad.
I think we've done it to plenty of teams over the years, and kind of felt like partly they brought us down to their level with some of their kind of defensive tactics and that sort of stuff. But I think also for the most part, even though they kicked straight and they took their opportunities, and that kept them in the game really. But it was really, once again, it was St Kilda beating St Kilda. It wasn't West Coast beating St Kilda really any stage. It was St Kilda beating St Kilda, and that entry into 50 is disgusting. Again, I mean, like we just didn't seem to learn from mistakes. Like across that whole first half, essentially, the number of times we have free ball on the wing or through the middle of the ground, and we actually moved the ball relatively well across half back and through the middle. But it was that kick inside 50 that so many times we spoke about it almost every time we had the ball, the way that we would nearly kick it to a 2-on-1 or a 3-on-1 or essentially a free West Coast defender. Like it happened nearly every time. And it was only the fact, Max King, copped a couple at ground level. Butler was obviously pretty good. And we were able to kind of make some things out of nothing, but there was no real, outside of, there was some good play across the rest of the ground. And I thought we moved the ball somewhat okay for the most part throughout the course of the game.
And only gave up 12 shots. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think like something has to change in the way that we, whether it's our forward structure or the way that we bring the ball inside 50, something has to change because it's clearly not working. It hasn't worked. Even when we were playing really good footy at the start of the year, that was still our biggest issue, was that delivery inside 50. So I'm not sure what it is, whether it's this forward structure, whether it's the strategy and the direction from coaching and the football staff or whatever, but something has to change.
Yeah, it does. And
you probably argue it wasn't going to be a day for the big forwards on the weekend. And it kind of turned out not to be, but they probably beat us in those stakes in the match.
Yeah, they did.
The majority of their goals probably came from marks inside 50, whereas most of ours were scrappy. King kicks both his goals out of general play, which we'll also discussing, saying I think most of his goals, the majority of these goals this year, feel like they've come from open play rather than him taking marks, kicking goals. It's been, but Butler kicks 5. It's perfect conditions for his sort of game, but we're not going to get that if he's not going to get that sort of opportunity if we just sit the ball up above defenders' heads. That's where it's got to be an opportunity for our forwards to bring it to the ground in front of them. So it's still playing to the conditions. It probably suited us in that way because that's how we seem to have scored a lot lately. But yeah, if we're going to, I guess, exploit something that we've been good at recently, probably what we probably could have done a lot more of is actually a bit more of that chaos into the forward line, because we probably could have, I guess, made them look a bit more out of place by doing that, rather than just kicking it straight to them, which is pretty much what we were doing for half the time.
We got 8 goals from small forwards, and the 4 goals we got from key forwards were all scrambles, Membry and King, the 4 that they kicked between them. And obviously we got 2 from Higgins, 5 from Butler. Long got the goal from the run-down tackle and the good finish. Mason Wood, a hurried snap. Brad Crouch, a hurried snap. So it didn't appear. I think the only deliberate set shot goal I can recall us kicking, obviously Ben Long kicked that one around the body, was Butler on half time, the one where you sort of laced it from the pocket. So whereas they kicked probably, I'm going to say 7 or 8 from set shots, I would think. I can't remember too many general play goals at all that they kicked really. And yeah, I guess it was quite strange in that sense to have the really contrasting styles of play. I guess a couple of questions. One, I'll throw to you, Nick, and the other one I'll throw to H. Nick, Cooper Sharman playing back, obviously, the last couple of weeks. He was okay. What do we think of it?
Yeah, he was okay. I don't see him being a long-term option there. I find like you lose his dynamicness.
Yeah.
And he's versatile. You know that you can throw him back there if you need to. And maybe that's the way that we've got to go, is that he plays a bit of that swingman role where he can go back if you need to. But he's so dangerous up forward, and we know that he's inconsistent. We know that he potentially doesn't have the work ethic just yet, but he's a young kid. He's coming through. He's immensely talented. We know that. And I think it's just one of those things. You've just got to give him some time to develop and to learn the craft and become consistent. You can't become consistent if you're not given a consistent go. And for so long, he kind of comes into the team for 1 or 2 games, he gets dropped, or you move him back for a couple of games, he gets dropped. And like, I feel like he's just got to be given a shot, give him a stretch, like we saw at the end of, was it 2021? He had that kind of 4 or 5 week stretch where he was just given a spot. You're on, your forward pocket, or you're replacing King, who's injured, but you're going to play the next month, no matter what. You're going to play, go and do what you do. You're learning your craft at the same time. But you've got a month of solid footy ahead of you. So just go and do your thing and prove yourself. And I don't feel like since that time we've given him that opportunity. But I feel like he's a far more dangerous player when he's up forward than in defence. And, I hope that, one of the things that we look at moving forward, especially with some of the injuries that we're now looking at and players going out, that maybe Sharman forward and, Highmore back to play that role is one of the options.
Yeah, it feels our forward setup is more of a concern than the other end. And H, we'll talk about him, I'm sure, in votes, but Marcus Windhager, we probably felt the Geelong game was a breakout game, but this was maybe another breakout game.
Oh, absolutely. Played some really good football. He played to the conditions, and that's one thing that a good player does. They adjust their game as to where they're playing and what the conditions they're playing in are. And he throws himself at it. He gets himself into positions. He can read the play so well. He knows what's happening out there. And I mean, this guy has a pre-season. He comes back, bit more muscle on him. He's going to be putting players on their backsides every week, just barreling in, getting the ball, getting it out. He's going to become an inside midfielder that he's just a ball. And
he took Andrew Gaff down on the wing in one of the best tackles I've seen a St Kilda player do all year.
Yeah, he's got some real excitement about him. I mean, this is a guy we've got to hope we hold on to him for a long time, because he's going to give us some really good football over the years coming. Because to think he's still only 18, 19, and that's
fantastic physique, for an AFL player,
ready to play when he came to us straight away. And he should only get better. I mean, we've seen players that have flown into the game and then gone off after not much. They've shown a little bit and then just disappeared. But I don't see that happening here. I think we've picked up an absolute jet.
It's rare to see that happen with inside mids. I think he's generally okay. Sometimes the outside players can find it a bit harder, but those inside players will generally survive.
Definitely one for us all to get excited about.
Might start with you, H, because he might feature. I won't preempt, but your votes?
Just misses, I think, unfortunately. Bit like the Rising Star. Just missed it.
Dare I say.
We unfortunately played Hugo Hagen into good form, and he went and destroyed Melbourne the week after, so you sort of can't argue against it. So I actually gave one to Dan Butler. Played to his strengths. He provided, he got to the right places. He basically, his pressure was good. He basically gave us an option on the day that we needed that sort of option. And that it was a great small forward game. I mean, 5 goals, only 1 vote might be a little bit harsh in some eyes. It's while he's kicked 5, like he wasn't fantastic, but he's very serviceable and a very good game. And I mean, at the end of the day, he kicked 30 points. We won by 28. So if he's off and he has an absolute shocker of a day and does his little fancy kicks that we do see sometimes and pass them off and that sort of thing, we may have had a lot more of a battle on our hand on the day. So made the right decisions, and that's the key to what we want him doing. We want him making the right decision. We'll excuse the first one, but then from there on, he was pretty good. So, 2 to Brad Crouch. I think he was pretty big on the day. He had, ended up being 31 touches and 11 tackles and a goal. That's a pretty good day out for anyone, honestly. So, gave us a lot of, again, 8 clearances, used the ball quite well. So he's had a big day and kept us moving when we a few times where it looked a bit stagnant, and actually became the one who was moving the ball. But 3 to our missing votes this year. He hasn't been getting many, so Jack Steele hasn't had many 3s this year. First time 40 touches. Led the way and just clearly best on the ground on the day, and I think picked up the full 10 coaches' votes as well. And it was pretty much a mile ahead of the field on the day.
Nick, your assessments?
Pretty similar. Windhager just missed out. Butler just missed out. Any other day, they could be anywhere in that top 3. Also, honourable mentions to Mason Wood, who I thought was very serviceable across the ground. Rowan Marshall as the lone ruckman, as we know that he can be. It was good to see him kind of have that sort of performance. Jack Sinclair, I thought was solid, but not his best game. I think we've seen him have more of an impact, and I think West Coast put a fair bit of work into nullifying his effect or impact across halfback. I gave 1 vote to Tim Membry. I just think this guy's leadership is something that we've seen all year. Has just kept stepping up and playing his part and going above and beyond, I guess, what's expected of a second or third forward guy. His size, his height, the role that he plays, but his leadership, especially while Jack Steele was out, but I think even more so in the last few weeks while Steele's been back, his leadership and standing up when things are perhaps not going the way that we want them to. You can always rely on Tim Membry to put in everything and a little bit more. I thought he did that again on Sunday night. I gave 2 to Brad Crouch. I thought his first quarter was immense. I thought he was by far the best player on the ground in the first quarter. Directing traffic, he dominated the middle, winning the ball everywhere, and was just a massive part in our first quarter dominance that unfortunately didn't lead to a first quarter dominance on the scoreboard, but deserved to. And then for everything that you said, H, on Skipper Steele, it's nice to see him back in the pole position in the Jack Steele votes for the Jack Steele Award. He's not going to win it this year, but good to see him back in the 3 votes.
Few honourable mentions. Rowan Marshall gets an honourable mention. 49 hit-outs, did some work around the ground. Membry Sinclair went past 500 disposals this season. First time in his career he's done that. And for the stats-minded people, that's a handy recognition. And everything he does is polish, and that was terrific. Way back when we played Hawthorn in round 4, I think I said Jay Gresham was the unluckiest player not to get votes in that game. I'm actually going to pass that baton on to Brad Crouch. I've actually squeezed him out. He was outstanding, but just misses out on votes. I think under any normal circumstances, you could even get 3 in a game like that. But gave one to Dan Butler, 5 goals, game breaker, relatively low scoring contest, had a big influence on the game. I know he got a couple of Joe the Gooses, but that's what small forwards do. That's okay. I actually gave 2 to Marcus Windhager. I think Tim Kelly, yes, we could debate whether he was fit. But he was out there, he was playing, and he's hugely important. He's hurt us before. He's only had 4 touches. Windhager's given him an absolute bath and then had 23 himself and set up some goals. So I give Windhager a couple of votes. And, Jack Steele, career-high 40 touches, hugely influential, 11 clearances, a million tackles, a great game. And obviously really important that the skipper helped to lead us back towards obviously a bit of form, like Jack Higgins' first half too. It was a bit quieter after that, but certainly got us going a bit early in the piece. Now, our next special guest didn't play a lot of footy, but provided a lot of excitement and showed the way for, I guess, a lot of our significant results against Geelong over the 15, 16, 17 period, where we played some good games against them, and he was front and centre in a lot of those. He was also a player beset by injuries, but a bit of a cult hero amongst the club. I speak of Darren Minchington.
Revolt, big fly, couldn't quite haze, terrific to Dalsano. So the big 3 all together in the one sentence. So they have a kick to Curran. Revolt running hard. Minchington at full forward. He's got a goal, the boy. Has he? Yes. He's had a pretty good night.
Well, the St Kilda Hawthorn crossover has been fairly common, not just on this podcast, but over the journey. We've spoken to the likes of Russell Green, Russell Morris, Shane Savage, Zach Dawson being another one. There's obviously current players like Ben McAvoy that did the crossover as well. And our next guest is another of those, recruited or originally grew up down on the Mornington Peninsula, which back in the day was a Hawthorn zone, but a St Kilda heartland all at the same time. Plenty of great St Kilda players recruited from that part of the world as well, but he was taken pick 65 in the rookie draft in 2012. Spent a long time in the AFL system with the Saints and the Hawks, a lot of injuries. Stifled his growth as a player, but showed tremendous potential on a number of occasions. Darren Minchington, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we'll start off with the one that we normally ask last, but what are you up to these days? What does life entail?
Yeah, since I finished footy a couple of years ago, got into a really good sales role. So I'm in the waste management industry now. So pretty much work on the road and work from home. So, work-life balance is really good. So at the moment, I'm really happy. Still living down on the peninsula. So, all going well and enjoying post-footy life.
Minch, going back to the beginning, but like Parko said, grew up on the peninsula, played with the Stingrays in the TAC Cup. The rookie draft. Had you spoken to St Kilda before? Did you know that the club was looking at you, and what was that night like, or that day like?
Yeah. So I had Trout come to my place, and had a bit of a sit down. It was late in the year. I found out the Saints were keen. I thought Essendon was the one me and my management thought were going to take that pick before. So Essendon had the pick before at 64, and I was like, going to Essendon. So it was like a shoe-in going there. But yeah, no, they obviously kept an eye on me. But yeah, I was just at home really. Like the rookie draft back then was just at home looking on the computer and just waiting for my name to be called out. And then I was in the club the next day, and the rest is history after that.
Getting with, obviously, it was nice and close to home because it was down in Seaford at that time. And how was the feeling down there? We hear, they're so far away and that sort of thing. But for yourself, obviously being so close to home, was it an easy transition just to be able to head up the road and go train and then not long to get back home again?
Yeah, no, it was, for me, it was perfect. Like I obviously stayed at mum and dad's for that first year. Especially with those injuries, I had hip surgeries in my first year, so I was barely even at the club. So, but the transition for me, it was more just the wake ups in the morning that got me. The transition was the hardest for me. But the travel, the older guys that were in the club, you could tell they were not all about Seaford, just because they were all set up from the city and happy to travel to Moorabbin every day. But moving down to Seaford wasn't that great for them.
I'm always keen to know, I guess, that transition when you first arrive. You spoke about, getting drafted at night and then being at the club the next day. What's that process like? Are you having players sort of ring you, and then when you get to the club on your first day, are you straight into it? Is it a case of, we're off for a run, there's a session? How does that sort of work?
I had the coach. So we had the Scotty Waters call up, and then we had at the time was Danny Ryan, who was like the play with there. So it's sort of just call up, let you know like you come in, what time, and that. First day was pretty much, I didn't really do too much. I sort of watched on, and you get like assessments. You go see the doctor, physios, go get all your gear and all that. Go in the meetings, get introduced, all that kind of stuff. But it was a very light on day. But then, because I was coming in and they eased me into it a fair bit with my previous injuries and history and that. So I got eased into it a fair bit, where some of the other lads you can just get straight into it sort of thing.
What are the conversations like with the coach in those first couple of days? I mean, do they give you an idea of how they see you fitting into the squad, into the team? Do they give you a role? Like, how does that transition work from undrafted to rookie and then first day in at the footy club?
You have like a bit of a one-on-one, so you'll get to know where they see you as a player and where they think you can fit in the team in that. And as at the time, I was the small forward type role, so to fit in that forward line with the pressure and all that kind of stuff, that's when you start to realise that defensive side of more than just all about attacking when you're underage, going just thinking about goals and that's about it. So that's when you start to really drill down on the role that you wanting to perform for the team. But as a rookie back then, it was just like it was so much. Obviously, it's different now, but like it's back then, it was you had to wait to get on the senior list to be able to actually play and all that. So it took time to. Even though if you're playing well, like it's just like, well, you can't get picked next week because unless someone goes down with a long-term injury, then you're not getting on that senior list.
You eventually got that opportunity at the end of 13.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously played a bit of time at Sandringham before there. And
yeah,
did you find that you played a role at Sandringham, and was there much influence from the senior team that getting to the point that eventually you would be stepping up? Did they give much instruction saying this is sort of what we want him to be doing when coming to the senior team, and can we play that role, or did you just have a sort of a free rein?
My role was just that small forward pressure type. But the problem was I was a midfielder at Sandy for so long. Like majority of the time I was playing midfield, but then when I came to the AFL, I was just pure forward. So trying to get that balance right, but I just loved playing mid, and I hated playing forward in VFL. So it was hard for me to get out of the midfield, especially when you start either when you're losing, you want to stay in there. If you're playing well, you want to stay in there because you're going to be highlighted more, sort of thing around the ball to put your hand up. So that side of things, I guess, over time at the start didn't bother me, but over time it started to annoy me because I wasn't playing midfield when I was going up. I would be every now and then I'd get thrown in there because I just didn't like to change their midfield. So that side of things was a bit frustrating.
As you developed your career, you had a very good record against Geelong. Obviously, you played 3 very good games against them. They were also, fairly significant games for St Kilda as well. Was there something about matchups that you seemed to get hold of them a bit?
I just don't think they wanted to play on me. I don't know. I don't know. I don't always found Geelong's defence because they just obviously love to come off and support. So they would always come like a Jed Buse, and that would always come off me, or if it was like a Mackie, if I was playing a bit deeper, it was Mackie, or who else was down there at the time. There was a few others, but they'd always roll off and support. Like they would always roll off the smaller forwards, sort of thing. So it left you free a lot of time, sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it's just the way we played against Geelong as well. It always helps. Like forwards is such a funny role because it's always the way the ball is used as well will determine how small forwards play. A lot of the time, if your ball movement's slow and all that, it's hard to get in the game, especially at high half forward. It gets kicked over your head 90% of the time. So you're doing a lot of running and then for not much of the ball.
I was going to say, adding to that was the approach that Hawthorn had to you, knowing that their rivalry, did they want someone who would kick 3 goals a game against them? Is that what they
I think obviously I played pretty well in a final in the VFL against Box Hill at Port Oval, and I reckon that's probably might have helped me get across to Hawks. But they wanted me to, obviously with pretty much why they were looking at me because Cyril retired premature. So they were like, and then obviously Poppy was getting a bit like was getting to 30, getting into the 30s. So they were starting to look obviously and they had no one in between that age of like middle age, my age group. So that's what they were looking at. Unfortunately, it didn't work out as well as I was hoping and I thought it would. I thought the change would be good, fresh start, fresh eyes, fresh medical, coaching, all that kind of stuff. Go there and ping my hammy 3 times in the first year. So, it was a pretty rough start, and then getting delisted and relisted, and that was a fun couple of months there.
The end of 2013, you finally broke into that senior squad and got a couple of games toward the end of the year, and then Scott Waters gets sacked and Richo comes in. What are your memories of that time?
Yeah, it's like a blur almost. Like looking back at it, I'm like, because there was a lot of, I guess, conflict with the leadership group and Scotty, and then obviously the higher up people in the club as well. So, my first 2 games I played Hawthorn on a Friday night, got demolished by, I think it was between 80 and 100. I can't remember, so I might be able to remember. And then the next week I played Sydney at Sydney. First 2 games when they were both humming along, like they were top 3 teams. So that was a great introduction into AFL life. And then pretty much get dropped after 2 games, sort of thing. So and with 2 games to go, which was kind of like frustrating. So where I thought over my career I just didn't get a good run at it. My most games I ever played in a row was 5. So you look at, I don't know, kids coming in, getting drafted and getting 15 games straight off the bat. Here you go, here's like 15 games, go and show us what you can do. I just never had that feeling I could actually consistently just take that. Am I going to get dropped the next week, or I'm going to play well? The transition, so I sort of went away from that. I thought it was, I had to start with the transition with Richo coming. I thought it was going to be like a really good change. And Richo was, I don't know, it was hard. Sometimes he would say things, but then wouldn't actually go ahead with the things he said. So,
like what? Do you have any?
With other, it wasn't just me, but obviously it was small forwards. Like it was just small forwards. We would always be the first ones out of the team. So, all the small forwards would be so frustrated, like because you might be in for a few weeks, but if you don't play well, or if the team gets smashed, you're the first one on the chopping board. So that's why it's such a tough role. So all these small forwards that are dominating, I take my hat to them, sort of thing, because it's such a tough role, because I've been there and lived it.
Do you feel that, at various stages of your career that injuries and things like that always intervened? You mentioned you didn't get a great run at it, but what were some of the more frustrating, I guess, injuries or moments through that time?
Yeah, it's just first frustrating ones. It's a good question. I did my syndesmosis on my right leg. Then I had knee surgery on the left side. That were too frustrating because this took so long to get back from. I was hoping to get back sooner, but then there was pain in the leg running, and I couldn't fully put weight on, and it just took so much longer. And then the soft tissue, I did my hamstring, did my calf, did my quad all on the left side. I don't know, the list goes. I had shin splints, then I had back problems, and then I had thumb surgery and hip surgery. My first year I had hip surgery. I had hip surgery my first year. I had my right one done first because it was a bit worse off. And then I had to wait for 4 weeks before I could do my left side. So I was in crutches for 8 weeks at home, twiddling my thumbs pretty much my first year. So my first year was pretty much a write-off, really. After, I think I played 4 or 5 Sandy games, including practice matches, and then I was in for surgery. So the transition wasn't a good start, I guess, because you obviously 1-year contracts, rookie, and all that kind of stuff. Look, there was probably times where I could have probably done more, but in getting my body ready and all that. But it's a hard one, which was worse, to be honest, because I had so many. And there was no ACLs, there was no big 12-month injuries. They were just all big enough to be very frustrating and annoying sort of thing. They kept you out with my knee and ankle 8 to 10 weeks, half a season gone, sort of thing.
Despite the, the lack of footy over the years, I mean, you didn't play that many games. Was it 28 or something games for St Kilda?
28%.
Yep. But it felt like over that journey that the fans and the supporter base really got around you, even though you weren't in every week. But you'd hear the meatball chant ring out around the dome and that sort of stuff. Did you feel that as a player?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I feel like the fans were definitely on. I guess maybe I didn't really look into social media side of things or anything when I was playing, but I felt like they were on my side definitely. And I always would get messages and say this stiff sort of thing like that, stiff being dropped or can't believe you're not in sort of thing. I definitely had the sport, and I felt like I did a fair bit of good stuff at Sandy when I played in that. So in the VFL, but no, the fans were it was just more the backing from probably the coaches and that and all that was more that wasn't there, I guess.
In regards to teammates that you had at the time, though, did you keep in contact with many of them these days and still catch up with them places? And
So
who are some of the main ones you sort of attached to over the time?
Nathan Wright, Brandon White. Nathan was one of my groomsmen at the wedding a few years ago now. Brandon White, caught up with him a few weeks ago, went and watched the Saints game together. Speak to Loney a little bit, Sinclair a little bit, Steely. And then obviously, that's probably the main ones I speak to. I speak to a few of them every now and then, but not consistently. Probably Whitey and Righty and Loney. And then I'll do some gaming with Steely every now and then as well.
Steely's a gamer. Dude.
Yeah, every now and then he gets on.
So I imagine it was probably hard, coming into a club to know what it's like at other clubs or anything like that. But that period was pretty tricky for St Kilda. Obviously, they'd lost the 2 grand finals not long before.
Yeah.
They had a coach that for whatever reason, obviously it wasn't necessarily clicking with senior players. They'd moved to Seaford, which had rubbed a few people up the wrong way. Did you kind of get a sense that the club was in, I don't know, whether in mourning or in pain or something like that, whether that was the right term, that things just weren't quite right?
Well, didn't feel like that in the first year because what did we finish the first year? I think we finished 9th, 10th. Yeah, so we're just out of the finals. It really, I guess that wasn't really noticeable then, but you can just tell because that was 12 list changes that year when I came in. That's a quarter of a list gone, swapped over. So I think once, obviously first year and then the second year, it just sort of it's got worse and worse, I guess, after 2011 or 2012, I should say. There was obviously fractures in the club, which you don't really probably notice as a player as much, unless maybe if you're in the leadership group, you might, because we obviously have our meetings there, but in the leadership group, you're having a lot more meetings than like a younger player would. Obviously, you're in meetings every week. You're going into leadership meetings and having meetings with higher up people and the coaches and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, definitely after probably 2013, once we started losing consistently, and then obviously starting to get all the older players sort of going out of the like getting traded and all that kind of stuff. Wasn't a great, I guess, atmosphere around the place. That's for sure.
What does that do to your, I guess, emotional state, mental state when the clubs, they're getting beat downs almost every week, and you're suffering injuries every couple of weeks. You get in the team and you're out of the team. You get dropped. You get an injury. You're back in the twos. All that sort of up and down, and it's a bit of a crazy life. But what does it do to you emotionally?
Oh, I had some tough times. It's just you just always. I always found it tough. Like I always beat myself, I guess, about it, like internally. I got to the point, it's pretty hard, but like I didn't realise until I left and went to Hawks. That's when I sort of opened up a lot more. I had a psych there, and that side of, the mental side of things, I really opened up. And you don't realise, because you're in a bubble, like AFL World's just a big bubble, and like each club's got their own bubble sort of thing. Until you're out of that, I had some dark moments there, that's for sure, and that came out when I came to Hawthorn. Looking back now, I definitely would have done things probably differently. One thing was obviously would have been to speak out and speak up, sort of thing, because I held a lot of things in internally. The frustration and all that kind of stuff. And it was also, I was so hard on myself, because obviously I put on weight a lot easier, a lot of other players. So I was always hard on myself and would always be focusing, pinching my skin. Like that's just not sort of, you shouldn't be thinking about that as an athlete. That's the last thing you should be doing, sort of thing, like is worrying about, what's my skin is going to be like this in a few weeks' time, and constantly thinking like that.
I'm sorry I had to go through all that sort of stuff, but I guess the second part of the question is we don't often get to talk to former players that have gone through, I guess, that type of stuff. But what is the exit interview like when you finish up, you get delisted? What's that conversation like with either list manager or the coach, and then you've got to pack up and leave the club, and what happens?
Yeah, so I've had a couple of those now. So first one was I sort of saw it coming, but I was leaving anyway. So I'd already spoken to Hawthorn 2 rounds before the end of the season. So I already met up with Clarko and a few others at the club at Waverley one night. And they were keen, and I had a chat with my manager. My manager's like, I think it's time to seriously make a change, sort of thing. Like 7 years is a decent stint. Considering the average at the time when I was playing was like 3.5 years on the list. I think he's like, I think it's time for a change up. So it was, I was still flat, because I was like 7 years. I've got that many good mates. I've got that many like people I know, like within the club. Like you get to know so many people, coaches, players, staff, and all that. Pretty much, Richo just called me in to his office and said that we're not going to keep you on. Pretty much just said, we're going to unfortunately have to move you on, sort of thing. And I was upset, but I was upset more because the people I'd made friendships with, and I was going to leave. But I knew I was like, it was just going to make it easier to go to Hawthorn, pretty much. So that one was tough, but the Hawthorn one got me. Yeah, because I didn't see that coming. Obviously did the 3 hamstrings that first year, and then got called into the office and said that with all the stuff, we just unfortunately won't be able to keep you on, but we want you to train on, and sort of thing. Which was tough to take, considering like I thought it was going to be a good change and all that. I was like, oh, here we go again, sort of thing.
Finished up, went from playing games on the field to games online, and basically becoming a content creator as well. So what is it you got into, and what is it you, I guess, specialize in that sort of area for, and what are you streaming and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So I sort of got in because AFL Gamers started. I'm not sure if you've heard of it before. So AFL Gamers is sort of started my last few years, the footy. So I got involved with that, and that was just streaming on like through Twitch and that. And I'd never even heard of Twitch like about 4 or 5 years ago. I wouldn't have a clue what like all that stuff. I game like as a kid, like played Call of Duty and whatever Grand Theft Auto, but I never got into like watching or streaming or any of that kind of stuff. So, pretty much stream on Twitch. I did have a good crack there for a while there. I was streaming a fair bit once I finished footy. Slowed down a fair chunk now that the full-time job and all that kind of stuff and other things away from job and that, the life. So I stream on Twitch in a esports org called Gallium, GLM. So they main like Fortnite, they were in COD, and there's a few other things they're going to get into, but they do like a lot of content-based stuff and IRLs. They want to get into more IRL, like in real life stuff, videos and all that. So yeah, part of that group, do a lot of stuff for them, trying to build them up as well and get some, sponsors on board, and just esports is so big. Like people don't realize how big and how much money is involved in esports. It's crazy. But I'll try and stream like once or twice a week on Twitch. I play still Fortnite. I'll play the new COD when it comes out. So that's pretty much a bit of a rundown on esports and how I got involved in it.
As a final one, when you look back on your career, obviously when you were given a chance, you played some very good footy. What are you most proud of? What's a memory that, I guess, when you think of footy, is there something that'll come back to you most often? Is it the 2 goals in the first minute against Geelong in 15? Are there things that sort of stand out in particular?
Well, obviously playing one game like that running out Friday night was, you can't explain how the tingles that go through your body when you play your first game, and having everyone there, like friends, family, and just everyone there, sort of thing. Besides the result, probably like I came from growing up in Jemana, playing. Like I was in Stingrays early, got cut because I just didn't really give a shit about footy. Playing seniors, partying every Saturday night, going out, drinking with mates. Started taking it seriously when Stingrays picked me back up when I was, 16, 17. So to be able to actually get drafted and play 9 years of AFL footy from where I came from is a pretty proud moment once you finish your footy, to see where I was and where I'm now. I'm pretty proud to say I could play one game of AFL footy, to be honest.
If you could go back to first gamer Darren Minchington and give him some advice, what would you tell yourself?
I would actually hone in on the mental side of the game. Because if I think I got that right, I think I could have done. I don't know. I think I was so internal and was so strong on myself internally that it just built up. And then once as I said before, once I got to Hawks, it just exploded, sort of thing. So if I could, go back and actually hone in on that side of things, who knows what could have happened. All that stress on the body doesn't help with injuries, all that. Once you look, it's easy to say now, once you're retired and finished. But that's probably one thing.
Yeah, I think it's a very good answer, and we appreciate your honesty throughout all of this. It's been great to get your insights. Thanks for your contribution to the club along the way. So we had a lot of fun watching you, and obviously in retrospect, wish you had a bit more luck on your side, but you played some fine footy, and thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Darren Minchington there. We look ahead to Hawthorn. We've recorded this podcast a little bit earlier in the week, so normally we would have teams named, but not yet. Obviously, we wait and see what happens with Jack Billings, who had the back spasms and was subbed out of the game 3 or 4 minutes in. And Jay Gresham, the reports immediately after the game seemed quite positive on his knee. I think a lot of them were suggesting it was a knock on the knee and he might be right to play. 6-day break coming back from Perth. You worry about that a little bit, but hopefully Gresh gets up. Obviously, we know that Dan Hanbury is knocking right on the door, and that's the interesting debate. I mean, you look at the best 22 pushing for finals. If he's in it, you pick him. But then there's the argument that he might not play next year. But I think they'll pick him, and I think that it's perfectly fair enough to be all systems go and pushing on towards what you hope is a finals appearance. Mitch Owens played very well in the VFL, and we know he's a good player. And yeah, the guys like Connolly were travelling emergencies and things like that. And whether we go down another ruckman path for this game, with McAvoy being important to Hawthorn, do we back Marshall and Jared Lynott to do that job, or do we pick Campbell for this game? So, fascinating. Hawthorn have been a dangerous side. We've generally got hold of them in the last couple of years. It's been a good matchup for us. We smacked them earlier this year. We smacked them last year. So it is a good matchup for us. But in saying that, there's enough talent and they work pretty hard. They've been gallant. They've beaten Brisbane. They've beaten Geelong. Not an easy game, but the most winnable of our last 4. So we have to get this result. And it's absolute non-negotiable, Nick.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier, I'd like to see Sharman move back forward. Probably a Highmore come in to replace him or to slot like for like back into that defence. We know that he wasn't great in the couple of weeks before he got dropped, but I think that there's enough, the body of work of his career in the twos, outside of 1 or 2 games, a couple of weeks ago, he hasn't done much wrong, Tom Highmore. And so I'd like to see him get another shot. And I think this is a good week for him to do that. You can take intercept marks against Hawthorn with the way that they move the ball. And, that's obviously his strength. It'll be really interesting to see that Billings and Gresham, those injuries and how they pull up travelling back, like you said. The ruckman one's a really interesting one because I think Rowan Marshall, over the course of his career, has always played his best football one out as a ruckman, maybe with a bit of a chop out from Membry or whoever. But I'm inclined to go into this one with Marshall again, one out, and then hope for a Lynott or a Membry or a Battle or whoever it is or Sharman even when it's up forward to kind of take that second ruck or roving ruck around the ground, in those pockets or whatever. And just let Rowan Marshall get to work. That would be my inclination at this stage. But it's like you said, a really interesting one. But I mean, absolute must-win game. If there's a definition of a must-win game, and we've spoken a lot about must-win games over the last month, there's been a few of them. But this is, lose this game, season over. Win it, and things are alive. You're still alive, and while you're still alive, then you may as well give it everything you've got. But the Hanbury one's that interesting one that you mentioned. I think that they do play him. Probably I wouldn't if it was up to me, but I'd much rather give that game time to someone like a Mitch Owens. Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, I know, was quiet, didn't have his best game in the twos, but I didn't think that he deserved to get dropped in the first place. I'd be bringing him back in. We know what Brad Hill did against Hawthorn earlier in the year. I feel like someone like Nasiah can have a similar impact, maybe not hitting the scoreboard as much as Hill did that day at the G, but run and carry. His run and carry would have been nice. The way that he delivers the ball would have been nice on Sunday night. There weren't too many people who were pinpoint kind of delivery up the ground. So I'd be bringing Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller and Mitch Owens back in for the rest of the season, almost regardless of what happens from now. I understand the argument about Hanbury and is he best 22? And if he is, then you just play him. But look, it's a tough one. I don't think he's there next year. And I would much rather get that really high value game time into those young blokes.
And the Degoe noise H suggests that the Hanbury factor, I know he's been paid less this year than in previous years of his contract, but the noise around us being the likely destination for Jordan De Goey, and it does appear that we are the likely destination for Jordan De Goey, would suggest that we're going to obviously lose some money out of our salary cap, and Dan Hanbury would be the logical place where that would come from. But how do you see it in the lead up to this? I guess we'll find out if we've beaten a really bad side in West Coast and we're still struggling, or if we've got ourselves back on track.
Yeah. First place we have to look is their forward line. But even with them being down reasonably low on the ladder, their forward line functions really well. Mm-hmm. Gunston last week, you see he comes back and kicks 5 after a few weeks off, and Mitch Lewis, he's a young guy who's going to become a very good forward in years to come. And I think he kicked a few against us last time when
kicked 3 goals, 5.
Yeah, none of their forwards.
7, so.
Yeah, none of their forwards even looked likely on that day, but he was absolutely destroying us. So we've really got to keep an eye on him. But when you stop them, then all of a sudden Bruce jumps out and kicks 3 or 4 like he does, and
Dylan Moore.
It's a forward line that on their day, they could put 20 goals through without a worry. And we've got to make sure that we're really, really working well and on top of them, and just don't give them the space to be able to lead into, and like defenders do to King, don't give them the run to start. We've got to chop them off early. If we just allow them to do what they want to do up there, they're very likely to kick a winnable score, and we've saw them against Brisbane do that. We saw, as you're saying, against Geelong kick the winning score. The sort of team that they like to spoil other teams' chances if they haven't got one themselves. It's very much a pride thing for them to be a team that has an impact on the finals, even if they're not in them. It's the sort of club they are. So you can't go into this game thinking we turn up, we win, or anything like that. It is far, far from that. As we've said with a lot of other games, it's a danger game. It's very, very much a danger game. And if we're not switched on, then and basically wave the season goodbye. It's a big game, and we're really going to have to turn up. If we get the same opportunity we did last week in the first quarter, we're going to have to finish them. We need to finish them.
To them earlier in the year as well.
Yeah, so it's let's find that first quarter we should have had last week and have it this week. Don't concede those first 2 goals like we did again, and give them a good start. Like that's how we played the start of the year this year, giving away those first 2 goals. But yeah, let's get the first 2 on the board and build.
You can score heavily against them. By the same token, that they're in a pretty good side going the other way. I think they've outscored us this year, but have conceded 40 or something more goals than we have over the journey. And I guess we've got to look at it and say, well, there's a reason we did that to them earlier in the year, because for whatever reason, it's a matchup that does suit us. I know Ryder played that day and obviously famously got suspended. McAvoy didn't play that day, but at the same time, things have developed a bit with us, with Hunter Clark coming back in and various other roles in the side changing. So it has been a kind matchup for us in recent times. But you look at them pushing Sydney, beating Geelong, beating Brisbane, losing to Carlton by a point, losing to Collingwood by 4 points. So they've played well. I think they lost to Freo by 10 points in Perth. So they played well against good teams. But in saying that, they are where they are, we are where we are, and if we're fair income, you've got to find a way to tick the box. So it's that simple. We could be in the 8 at the end of that game, and subject to what happens in the Geelong Bulldogs match afterwards, knowing that we've got a really tough block after that. But if we put ourselves into the position, as we said last week, they've still got to catch us. So I think it's a bridge too far having to win the last 3 if you lose this. If you could pinch 2 of them, if you win this game, then obviously you give yourself a chance. So that's the reality of where it's at. We look at some of the awards. That's so St Kilda, I guess from my point of view, it's probably Marcus Windhager playing a blinder, but another kid just happens to kick 5 in the same rounds. A kid that's got a bit of hype around him, mind you. So under any other week just about this season, except for maybe the Essendon kid that kicked 5 in round 1, and Josh Rashali doing what he did earlier in the year, I reckon Windhager would have got the nom this week. But Nick, have you got any?
There's a couple. I mean, Josh Rotham kicking 2 against us. He's played 45 games and never kicked a goal, and then he bobs up with 2.
One of them with a busted leg, it seems, at the end.
But no, I think the premiership quarter, I mean, something that we spoke about earlier in the year that, and we've spoken a number of times about the trust and the trust levels in the footy club. And that was one of the most disappointing things, is that you finally get that hint of, hang on, we can actually trust them to turn up week after week and whatever. But that third quarter in the first half of the season, we were money. We were the best team in the competition in the third quarter. And it showed in so many ways. And then it's all kind of fallen apart. And that's kind of continued, even though, we did end up kicking that goal towards the end of the third quarter. But, we were outplayed. We were really poor in this third quarter. And it's just so St Kilda that we allow that to happen.
And it's also very St Kilda, that things that were strengths just become weaknesses for no apparent reason.
That's right.
H, yours?
Strength becomes a weakness. Jack Billings back. We go into state, and a minute into the game, we've lost a player. It's just what we wanted to start the match. It's just the kind of thing you sort of look at going, of course it's going to happen to us over there in a crucial game that we're desperately needing to win, and within a minute we've got a player limping off the ground, pretty much unable to move. And luckily we had last week's super sub come on again and play not too bad a game. So, but he kept the goal and provide plenty of pressure. Pressure was brilliant. So, but that's just the sort of thing that we have happen, is have an injury first minute in the state.
And then get another one at the end when the game was done, mind you, as well. But hopefully he's okay. H, your Jason Blake award.
I'm probably going to jump on Mason Wood this week. I reckon he, as we're talking before, he had a pretty good game. He was one of those players that he probably doesn't get as much attention as a lot of the other players, but he gave us some really good options. He made good contests. He just played a game that you look back and go, that was a really serviceable game. He gave us plenty. I'm suggesting he's probably done the job that he was asked to do on the day. And he came away. We kicked a nice goal there, as we said, and he's probably had what he could put down as probably a really good game for himself, and give himself a pat in the back for it.
Nick,
he had a really good year, quietly. Mason Wood,
has.
Not much plaudits, and probably deserves to be in this conversation. But I'm going back to Ben Long. I think the job that he's given us, the performances that he's given us, and his output over the last 4 to 6 weeks, I guess, over the journey. The effort stuff, like the stuff that doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, the harassing, the running, the chasing, the running patterns, the leading, the re-leading, the third and fourth efforts are really, really impressive. And then to top it off with that goal, I mean, we saw a number of good goals from the boundary line. There was Dacos, there was Ugle-Hagan, there was Jamie Elliott. But Ben Long's goal from the boundary line was a very impressive kick. I mean, that was a beautiful kick of the football, and just reward. And I was glad that he had the balls to go back and take the shot. I mean, there's a lot of players in our team, I think, specifically, that kind of shit themselves and you get in that position, and, they'll look to kick it to the top of the square or kick it out in the full or whatever. And for Ben Long to kind of have the understanding to let's slow things down, let's be calm, go back and kick the goal. And he did that, and I thought he was really impressive again.
Plenty of key forwards over the year be for about the same position and not even get within 5 meters of the point post. So it was a really, really nice kick.
It was. Mine's probably Jared Lynott. Now, we look at Jason Blake, who was a ruckman by accident for a lot of times, not necessarily suited to playing the role, but grew into it nicely. And Lynott didn't ruck much because Marshall carried most of it, but I thought Lynott did some nice things, particularly in the ruck in the last quarter. He competed pretty hard at some crucial stoppages. I think around the ground he had an influence. I think he's been okay most times we've picked him, but I think for him to come back into the side and play that type of role, pinch hitting ruck, giving us a bit of run around the ground, did a job. So well done to him, and that's a very Jason Blake thing. Shannon Noel Award is probably a trickier one this week. It's probably harsh on him because he's got so much talent and look, he's on track to kick 50 goals for the year. But I think Max King, he kicked a couple of nice goals at ground level, which shows his strength. But I thought Barras certainly beat him in the air. And Max, he's not done any favours by horrific delivery and the way we move the ball and things like that. And it must be so frustrating. We had Matthew Richardson on a few weeks ago, and it reminds me of that a little bit, some of what he copped forward. But I think he's also got to make sure that his work rate's up all the time. We don't expect him to be Nick Riewoldt, and people don't necessarily work as hard as that all the time. But if he can just push up and push back and just be constantly, always working and working and working in repeat efforts, I think that's still an aspect of his game that can be worked on. But Nick, have you got one?
That's mine. I'm not sure I can add any more to that. But Max King, for exactly those reasons, doesn't work hard enough to win the ball. I don't think at ground level, he's obviously very dangerous. A guy his size, the way that he moves around the ground is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
He's so talented. And it's almost unfair that he does some of the things that he does at ground level. But if he could only do the things that we want him to do most of the time, which is lead and clunk a mark and kick a goal, like that's what he's in the team to do. We don't necessarily want him crumbing and kicking 2 goals off the ground, every week. We want him taking a couple of big marks, contested marks, bringing the ball to ground for the smaller guys, front and center. And when he does take that mark, so often he goes back and fluffs the kick. Immensely talented, so skillful at times, but there just seems to be, I don't know if it's a mental block or whatever it is that kind of stops him from reaching that potential. It's still early in his career. I just hope he gets there.
H?
Again, maybe it's a little harsh. He's not really playing a position that he's ever played before or played for very long. But when you look at Sharman being down back and you look at the conditions that they were on the weekend, as a defender, he was the only one without a tackle in the team. That's kind of something you look at and go, everyone else is doing it. Everyone else is tackling. Everyone else is getting in there and doing that. Get one on the board. Get that pressure in. If you're going to be playing as a backman and that's what they're going to be using you as, then you've probably got to register at least one. It's almost inexcusable to not have a tackle in the back line. So when he moves back forward, you also want to see that up the forward. So let's see some pressure and let's get a couple on the board this week, Sharman, and let's see some good defensive work.
The way our selection committee is going, he'll probably be given the captaincy this week for that. Given in a game where we barely had any tackles the other week and Wanganeen Miller had 5 and he gets dropped for that, Sharman will probably get given the keys to the RSCA Park.
Raven Town Hall.
Yeah, it seems that he played defence within the strengths that he plays as a forward, reading the game and running and jumping at the ball. But obviously there's a little bit more to it than that. I mean, he did some things well, but yeah, there's got to be that constant pressure all the time. So he's probably still working through that. And he might have a difficult role this week. I'm not sure exactly where Dougal Howard's at, whether he needs one more or whether he's in the frame, but we'll find out. He'd be a nice inclusion, particularly the week after when we've got Hawkins and Cameron to worry about. So we'll see what happens over the coming days. But massive game again on Saturday night. Hope all the Saints fans can get along to Marvel and cheer at home. Get to 11-8, poke our noses into the top 8 with 3 weeks to play and prove that we are truly up for the fight. We got the result last week. Was that a turning point or a flash in the pan? We'll find out in a few days' time. But thanks to Darren Minchington also, and go Saints.